Scandal: the government appoints former Judge Baltasar Garzón as president of the Truth Commission on Democratic Memory, while his wife Dolores Delgado is the chief prosecutor for democratic memory. Let's begin. Hello and welcome to a new edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. And today, we have to tell you about a new scandal, yet another scandal from Pedro Sánchez's government. The truth is that they act with total impunity, with complete shamelessness. They don't care about anything, there's no shame. And we've learned, in the last few hours, about an appointment that is rather scandalous. We're going to talk about the former judge of the National Court, Baltasar Garzón, or simply former judge since he was expelled. Baltasar Garzón has been chosen, appointed by Pedro Sánchez's government as, attention, President of the Truth Commission for Democratic Memory. You might say, that's already kind of strange, right? It sounds strange. A person who has been convicted of knowingly issuing an unjust ruling and expelled from the judiciary. To me, that's already outrageous, but on top of that, to make matters worse, right, we find ourselves with the fact that his wife, who is the prosecutor Dolores Delgado, is the current chief prosecutor, that is the highest authority in the Democratic Memory Prosecutor's Office. In other words, the couple is going to handle everything themselves. I mean, it's a real joke. Let's go over this information as we always do, sharing it on screen so you can follow along from home, because honestly, it's all worth paying attention to. You already have the image of the two main figures there. Dolores Delgado, on the left, as you know, was Minister of Justice with Pedro Sánchez, Attorney General, and now she is the Chief Prosecutor for Democratic Memory. When you hear the term Chief Prosecutor, it means it's the highest position a prosecutor can aspire to, just below the Attorney General, because the Chief Prosecutor is the top person responsible for a specific area in the prosecutor's office. In this case, Dolores Delgado is the Chief Prosecutor for Democratic Memory, and here you have her distinguished husband, Baltasar Garzón, whose resume we all know. Basically, he was expelled from the judiciary for judicial misconduct, for ordering illegal wiretaps on the lawyers in the Gürtel case. Just think about the two people we're talking about here. Of course, all of them are very close to Pedro Sánchez. The couple formed by former Judge Baltasar Garzón and prosecutor Dolores Delgado will lead the Democratic Memory Initiative on behalf of Pedro Sánchez's government and the Public Prosecutor's Office. The Minister of Territorial Policy and Democratic Memory, Ángel Víctor Torres, chaired the meeting of the Democratic Memory Council this Wednesday, where it was agreed to appoint Garzón as president of the Truth Commission, a person who has been convicted, who has a criminal record for judicial misconduct, who has been expelled from the judiciary, is now the president of the Truth Commission. It's quite something. A commission created to clarify human rights violations during the civil war and the dictatorship. This commission will include in its work, as they say, testimonies, documentation, and analysis compared with international experiences. And it will prepare a report with conclusions and recommendations aimed at ensuring reparations for the victims and preventing these events from happening again. Dolores Delgado has served as Chief Prosecutor for Democratic Memory since 2023. His job is to coordinate the investigations and actions of the Public Prosecutor's Office regarding serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. He also enforces the Democratic Memory Law, especially in relation to the events that took place during the 1936 coup d'etat, the Spanish Civil War, and the Franco dictatorship. This is how Dolores Delgado's work is defined as Chief Prosecutor for Democratic Memory. That's how they define it. The legal sources consulted by Medidas Cautelares and Libertad Digital state that it is a scandal that the government has appointed Baltasar Garzón as president of the Truth Commission of Democratic Memory. First of all, as I was saying, because he was expelled from the judiciary after being convicted by the Supreme Court for the offense of knowingly issuing an unjust ruling and sentenced to 11 years of disqualification. Secondly, because his wife Dolores Delgado is the prosecutor in charge of Democratic Memory. They say it's already surprising that the socialist executive created the post of Senior Prosecutor for Memory Matters. They are prosecutors who do not participate in any trial, since either the alleged victims have already passed away or the alleged perpetrators have been amnestied. In the Democratic Memory Prosecutor's Office, they tell us they are limited to carrying out only administrative work. It would be inconceivable, for example, to keep surgeons in a hospital if they are not performing surgeries. Well, in the Democratic Memory Prosecutor's Office, prosecutors who do not take part in trials are being paid courtesy of Pedro Sanchez. The same sources consulted point out that Dolores Delgado will be obliged to recuse herself if she receives a democratic memory procedure derived from the Truth Commission chaired by her husband, Baltasar Garzón. It's a disgrace. Pedro Sanchez's government acts with unprecedented shamelessness in a democracy. And of course, if this man is going to be the president of the Truth Commission to review democratic memory procedures that Dolores Delgado then has to investigate, well, obviously she has to recuse herself, right? It's just common sense. Your husband can't prepare it for your wife to handle, right? Article 219 of the Organic Law of the Judiciary establishes that prosecutors must recuse themselves due to marital ties or similar situations or kinship within the second degree of blood relation or affinity in a proceeding. Here we're talking about the fact that they are husband and wife. So, if Baltasar Garzón, as president of the Truth Commission, is involved in several proceedings. Regarding democratic memory, then, Dolores Delgado shouldn't participate. She shouldn't. She should recuse herself as the prosecutor for democratic memory in those matters. But we all know what's going to happen. She won't recuse herself and one will set it up and the other will go along with it. We remember that last December the government established the so-called Council of Democratic Memory, an advisory body chaired by Angel Victor Torres and made up of associations and people like Baltasar Garzón and Cristina Almeida. I have to tell you that this democratic memory, we call it selective memory because we're interested in investigating events from almost 100 years ago, right? But, however, the most recent and saddest events in our history, which are those of ETA terrorism from just 20 or 25 years ago, those aren't of interest. Those aren't of interest. Why is that? Because Pedro Sanchez's government stays in power thanks to the support of Bildu, who are the heirs of Batasuna ETA, the pro-ETA people, and they need their support. So, that part of historical memory or democratic memory doesn't matter as much to us. The part that refers to ETA terrorism, that one we can ignore. We're interested in Franco. In 1936, we're talking about events from 90 years ago, okay? That one, yes, but not the ones from 20 years ago. For those, there's no memory. For those, there's no need to repair the harm done to the victims, nor do we need to restore that dignity, memory, dignity, and justice that the victims of terrorism deserve. Many of those cases are still unsolved and under investigation in the National Court, but they get no attention or remembrance. Only the cases from 100 years ago do, right? The ones from 100 years ago, since we need Bildu's support. Still, it's outrageous. It should be said that, according to the regulations of the Democratic Memory Council, the Truth Commission will be made up of 10 independent people of recognized prestige in the academic, legal, scientific, and human rights fields. That's what they say, of course. Along with Garzón, the commission will include Helen Duffy, Julián Casanova Ruiz, Araceli Manjón Cabeza Olmedo, Manuel de la Rocha Rubí, María Alejandra Vicente, Silvina María Romano, Cristina Monge La Sierra, Sebastián Martín Martini, and Francisco Erice Sebares. Additionally, the Council has appointed a group of alternate members who will ensure the proper functioning of this body, which will also have a specific subcommittee to investigate the violation of the rights of the victims of the Women's Protection Board. This was reported by the Ministry of Territorial Policy and Democratic Memory. This Women's Protection Board was an institution created by the Franco regime, where thousands of underage women were confined and tortured without having committed any legally defined crime. That's what the Ministry of Territorial Policy and Memory recalled. That's what we have in Spain. But Spaniards keep voting. They keep voting for this sort of thing. That is selective memory only for what interests us, to bring up the Franco issue, which is a classic move by Pedro Sanchez, but not for the victims of ETA terrorism. For that, we're not interested in memory. And on top of that, we put the illustrious couple Garzón and Delgado in charge of this issue of democratic memory. And we put the couple, and we put here the illustrious couple. On top of that, we put here the illustrious couple Garzón and Delgado. On top of that, we put the illustrious couple in charge. We put here the illustrious couple Delgado, democratic issue. The illustrious couple of Garzón, Democratic. which has already lost even the forms, the appearances, it doesn't matter. And we put here the illustrious couple, Garzón and Delgado, success, and we put, and that's it. De medidas cautelares, espero que os haya. We place the illustrious couple at the top, the democratic memory couple, like the chosen for under €3 a month or the supreme for under €7 a month. I will never get tired of thanking everyone for always being there. There will be videos you like more, videos you like less, videos that show up on YouTube, others that don't show up for you, but you're always there one way or another. Really, thank you all so much. You can also make contributions via Bizum at 6275563370, and of course you can also leave your comments, your opinions, and share the video with whoever you want. You already know that helps a lot to increase the reach, and here we are practically reaching 527,000 subscribers. Our next goal, as you already know, is 150,000. The most important thing, as I always tell you, is that this information reaches everyone because information is power. See you soon.